You're listening to the tale of two podcasters from the 2007 RAB TGO Challenge, brought to you by the outdoorsStation.co.uk.
This podcast is just one of a special series produced from a wealth of recordings made in May 2007 by two backpackers, Andy Howell and me, Bob Cartwright, as we made our way via two different routes from the west to the east coast of Scotland as part of the 2007 RAB TGO Challenge.
Here at RAB, we're pleased to be involved in the TGO Challenge, which is the perfect testing ground for our clothing and sleeping bags. RAB has a Scottish heritage and over 25 years' experience of making gear that performs in the varied weather of the Highlands, as well as gear for the highest peaks in the Himalaya.
Co-sponsors TGO, the Great Outdoors magazine, have been behind this May event since its inception in 1980. The framework and principle is totally unique. It isn't a race or a competition of any kind. The objective is to foster good fellowship amongst walkers within the framework of a challenging 200-mile expedition. The start consists of a series of sign-out locations on the west coast, from Torridon in the north down to Ardrishaig in the south. Each challenger, solo, couple or group makes their way via a high route, a low route or a mixture of the two across Scotland to finish anywhere between Arbroath and Fraserburgh on the east coast. There's a set 2-week window to do this in, and each participant submits their route for inspection prior to departure for safety and advice reasons. The places, however, are limited to 300, and details about the event, entry forms, past stories and photographs can be found in the October issue of TGO magazine and on their website. Each participant makes the challenge as easy or as hard as they wish. The extremes can be a remote high route, crossing wild country and not seeing another soul for days on end. Or a route which takes in the many social events, perhaps not camping at all and just using established accommodation all the way. Most people do a mixture of the two in different forms. This year I started with my wife Rose in the beautiful village of Plockton, and Andy Howell with his partner Kate started from Strathcarron. We both carried recorders with us to capture our audio diaries and conversations which took place with other walkers as well as locals as we made our way to the east coast. Yes, this is the tale and adventures of two podcasters. After the relief of finding space at the Altbeath YHA, we both slept really well and woke on Sunday the 13th of May on good form. If you've ever visited, you'll know that this hostel is a very special place, the value of which mustn't be underestimated. It certainly requires balanced, good-humoured management by a special person, and Gill Blair is that person. Gill, we're in the most remote youth hostel, I understand, in the UK. What does it actually feel like to be the warden here?
Very special experience. Not as isolated as a lot of people think. You do get quite a few visitors through the day dropping in for cups of tea, and very, very rarely have a night alone, whereas quite a few village hostels will have more time alone than I do.
So, I mean, we are literally... what is the closest roadhead? 7 miles away, did you say?
7 miles, yeah, Cluny Inn.
The Cluny Inn, 7 miles away. So basic questions, supplies and getting in basics of food and all that sort of stuff. Where does that come from and how does it get here?
Basically I get 3 nights off a month and I get land drovered out on the 1st, and then someone takes over from me and I get the 2nd and 3rd off and get land drovered back on the 4th with a month's worth of tinned food. And then if I need firewood or coal, hopefully head office will bring that in with the Land Rover.
But the hostel isn't open all year round, though, is it?
No, we're open from the 2nd of April till the 14th of September this year. October seems to be the real hard stalking season, so we've closed down for that now. But if anyone does want to come out of season, we do have the bunkhouses open all year round.
When you first got here now, because this is your second year, isn't it? You
Yes,
say,
yeah.
When you first got here, then you were dropped off early April. Did you say? What conditions are the place in? How is it left? Is it all dry and secure, and do you just walk in and just polish the surfaces?
It's not quite watertight building. I basically had to air out all the mattresses, replace pillows, put pillows in pillowcases, dry out blankets, put duvets in duvet covers, sugar soap all the walls, clean the entire hostel, keep the fires going for around 3 days, and then hopefully I'm ready for guests a couple of days later.
And the reason you're sugar soaping everything, I presume, because it's had moisture and growth and stuff.
Just a tad furry, yes.
I mean, you're fairly fortunate this year, I gather, with the weather, so you're able to leave the windows open to air it.
Yeah. I believe the person who started last season had fairly horrendous weather, so I couldn't imagine of opening up then. But yeah, I had about 3 or 4 days of blue skies and sunshine. Really lucky.
Now, I can gather by your accent you're not a local. And usually, obviously, backpacking is associated with Australians and Australian backpackers. So tell us how you have actually ended up running a hostel here.
Right. Well, my dad was actually born over here, so I've got dual citizenship. I've actually been in Scotland for around 5 years now, and I've worked for the youth hostels pretty much that whole time. I decided I'd had enough of living in and wanted to have a real life, and went out to work in the real world, found I couldn't pay off a credit card and eat. So came crawling back to the hostels. Went for Tomintoul Hostel, but they said, we'll just put you in Glenafric for a week and see if you like it. And if you don't, we'll take you out and put you somewhere else. And 4 months later, I was saying, can I have this next season?
It must take a lot of special qualities to be a warden. And I'm sure people who are into hill walking perhaps think it would be a nice thing to do. What, in your view, what do you think are the qualities you would actually need? And is it really a spectacular job for somebody who's an outdoors person?
I definitely don't think it's an outdoors person's job, this one. I believe the manager before me last season was a hill walker, very much into it, and was not here a lot. Believe the cleaning didn't get done too well. I do believe I'm the right amount of insane to run this hostel. I'm quite happy to be very sociable, have people in for cups of tea throughout the day. I don't close between 10 and 5 like a lot of hostels in this situation would do. But I do like to get my cleaning done and have a couple of hours to myself. It's not the sort of place a person who needs company could actually be, because I really do like my time to myself. So you do get a few hours through the day with no one, but you do have people popping in all day for cups of tea and that sort of thing. It's very sociable.
Is there a certain common trait in all the other hostel, the wardens that you know? Do you recognise amongst yourselves a certain mentality?
Definitely a love of the old hostel ethos. It tends to be what I would find to be a common trait. We do it more for the love of the place than for the money we get, or the prestige, really.
The fame even.
Definitely, not the fame.
With the news that certain hostels are closing, is there any danger a hostel as important as this will follow suit?
It's really hard to tell. You don't know why certain hostels close down or why others don't. We are on a peppercorn lease with the National Trust, and I believe we have 14 years to go, but I do like anyone who drops in for a cup of tea and, if they're lucky, a bit of cake, to send an email to the marketing at syha.org.uk and just say that they like this place being here. It's just to keep the name of this place up in head office's mind that people love it and do continue using it. Oh,
well, I thoroughly recommend people to do that. I mean, it would be a travesty to have something like this close.
Definitely. If the SYHA let it go, I'm not sure exactly what the National Trust would do with it. It might turn into a bothy, it might stay as... But I don't know whether it would have a warden here who would keep the fires going and make cups of tea for passers-by.
And wipe all the furry stuff off the wall.
Exactly.
And this particular spot, you were saying that you really do actually love it here, the solitude and so on. Oh,
definitely. I'm not a hill walker. I do suffer from migraine, so it just isn't my cup of tea. But I absolutely love the Highlands. I love being out here, and I love this building. It's, if you read Burn on the Hills, the Scott family have also had this tradition of inviting hill walkers in for a cup of tea and some scones and this type of thing. So I really do feel like I'm carrying on that Highland tradition.
The youth hostel, if people haven't been here before, is a real oasis in the desert of the Highlands. Sometimes when you're coming through, as we did last night, sopping wet and feeling like drowned rats, and to walk into a glorious fire and a cosy glow is one thing, but you have the spectacular, and I have to say it is spectacular after several days, shower that's piping hot. How does that work?
It's on the back boiler from the coal fire. I have had to actually learn how to run a coal fire, which was quite fun last year. But I've now got that down to a fine art. So we've got the hot shower, we've got flushing toilets, nice warm dry place, and a cup of tea seems to be a miracle out here. So people do appreciate it, and I do love this hostel and the people who come to it for that reason. That it's.
So finally then, do you actually only have a certain amount of seasons at a hostel, or can you choose to stay here for many years to come?
You can choose to stay as long as you like. This is my second season, and I do plan to continue staying here for as many seasons as I can possibly do.
About an hour ago we left Altbeath YHA and the wonderful warm hospitality there and roaring fires, which were a joy last night after a fairly cold, chilly, wet walk in, and we got there probably just in time because the weather came down a bit. This morning the clouds low. It's the day 3 blues basically. We're both complaining of the aches and pains and the cold neck and the stiffness that goes along with carrying a weight that we haven't been used to carrying for a while. Once we get past today, tomorrow we'll be much happier. We met several people last night at the YHA. Everybody all seems to be heading for Coogee Lodge, which seems to have some sort of reputation as being a den of iniquity, a hot spot of socialising, whatever you want to call it. And then we're heading that way as well, but we're not intending to stay. We're hoping to get a bit further on. We've just passed a local who was on the way to Altbeath, who said that the weather forecast apparently tomorrow is pretty bad and very wet and so on. And we want to get over to Drumnadrochit really before the weather hits in too badly. And I know we've got a fairly wet area to cross. So we're just coming down to the bridge to get across the river to cross over to the other side and start to head towards the lodge. How are you feeling today, Rosie?
Yeah, not too bad. It's you have to remind yourself as your shoulders are aching that you're actually in a beautiful place and there's such a lot to see, and it's just turn around to look at the views in any direction to appreciate where you are and forget the aches.
It's certainly there's a bit of wind though, isn't there?
Oh, it's a really cold wind this morning.
And that's it really. I mean, we were very lucky last night to get into the youth hostel, and very pleased to get into the youth hostel. It's that second day, third day when everything is wet and cold, and you've got that wind that can really take the thrill off the trip at this time like this. One thing, touching a bit on gear, that has proved, as always, to be a vital part of equipment for stuff like this, and one that we both agree that we just could not manage without, and that's the walking poles.
Yeah, that really helped. It wasn't until I started using them I appreciated how fantastic walking with poles is. It just takes so much pressure off you and gives you so much more stability, whether it's on rough terrain or crossing streams, on climbing hills. It's just, and coming down for that matter, in fact everywhere.
This year we're using the Lecky carbon poles. Last year we used the Alpkit ones. The Alpkit ones are certainly great value for money, but there's something about these Lecky ones that seem a bit more streamlined, don't they?
Yeah, definitely a bit more classy. They just carry more easily and sort of more slimline somehow.
Yeah, so but either way, whatever poles you use, they're I'd say they're absolutely vital for something like this. Although interestingly, it's surprising the number of people we meet that don't use poles and refuse to use poles. So how they carry heavy loads up and down these climbs and have maximum stability on the slippy footing, I really don't know. But obviously everybody's different. It was interesting last night at the White Chair. We met up with Maria and Stuart and Nan and Margaret and James and a couple of other guys. How all of us have got systems and equipment and methods which are unique to our own needs, but we're all quite happy with them, aren't we?
Yeah, Marie was saying that, for example, she's a restless sleeper, so the mummy-sized sleeping bags that are tailored just don't suit her, and she's got a Dutch one which is rectangular. It's still downfilled, and okay, she says it's, you know, maybe a little bit heavier than the mummy, but it gives her a better night's sleep, so she's happy to carry it. And similarly, talking to Margaret, who's on a 16th crossing, lovely lady, saying, you were talking about boots, and she was saying she's tried the Merrells like I've got with the Gore-Tex lining, but they made her feet sweat. Mendel's, sorry. And she's actually gone back to her old leather boots and is much happier with those. So I think, you know, we're all sort of looking and trying and tailoring to find just what suits each of us.
I think it's true to say that there's no unique range of equipment that will answer all your problems. I think there's a set range of items that will make life easier for you, but certainly specific needs you might have, you need to work a bit harder to tailor those to sort those out yourself. We're fairly happy with our setup. Where we could go a bit lighter would be, of course, if we were just taking one set of cooking gear rather than two, which we're using for experimental purposes and comparisons. But on the whole, it's only a few odd luxury items like deodorant and things like that I think I'd be happy leaving out my bag. What about you? You were asking me yesterday if there's anything you'd leave out.
Yeah, no, I mean, I always bring a slim book, which Bob doesn't. Bob brings all his recording stuff, but I wouldn't give that up either. I bring usually some poetry, because that's very easy to just pick up and put down and ponder on as you're traipsing through the landscape. But I mean, this year it looks like I'm not going to use my shorts, sunglasses and suntan lotion, as I didn't last year. They were the only items I didn't use last year when I was on the challenge. But Bob said he did it one year, and if he hadn't have taken those, he'd have been a real mess. So you just can't tell, really.
Plan for the worst, hope for the best. That's what I say. So yeah, it was quite a good sharing of knowledge. Anyway, we've come to a point where the path splits, so I just need to look at the map and work out which direction is home. And we'll switch back on a bit later on. Sorry if this has been a bit windy, but as I say, it's a very, very sharp wind this morning, and I wanted to record something.
When we arrived at Coogee Lodge, we found several experienced challengers already in situ, ready for an evening of good food and good company. One of which was Alan Hardy, who had done the trip many times before, and more recently had become a very helpful planning vetter to challengers, assisting many people out of route trouble before they walked into it.
Probably for the last 6 years. I was asked if I'd consider doing it, and gave it a wee bit of thought and then said yes, and it's actually great fun.
Do you sometimes, when you see people's ambitious and their ambitions of what they're trying to do, can you tell straight away they've actually got no experience of Scotland's potential terrain?
In many cases you can. Especially first or second timers, they put in the most ambitious routes that you know are just impossible to achieve. So again, you come back with a wee bit of advice and say, no, I don't think this is on, and make some suggestions as to alternatives that they could consider.
So how many years have you actually done the challenge yourself then?
This is my 20th crossing.
Oh my word, congratulations.
I've actually done, completed 19, completed the mini challenge during the year of the foot and mouth, and had 1 year when I had a wee accident and had a tumble and had to withdraw. But this, hopefully if I complete it, is the 20th.
Now, on the Thursday nights, usually when most people arrive at Montrose, Roger does his speech and describes the emotions of the people that go through it for the first time and second time and so on. What has been bringing you back for 20 times to do this?
That is a difficult question. The sheer enjoyment, I think, of getting away from everybody, getting out into the wilderness. The sense of achievement, I think, for walking from one coast to the other. Hard to describe, but there is something addictive about the challenge. It's something you've got to start and a finish. It's not like a recognised walk or a circular walk. It's just something unique, and you just keep coming back. You can't help it.
Over that period of time, you must have been to every start point and tried most of the routes that are potential through there, because obviously the way the locks are laid out through Scotland, it sort of forces you through bottlenecks. Is there any particular one that's memorable for any particular reason?
Oh, several. A Mallaig start, because that was my first challenge. Started at Mallaig in 1983, one of the wettest years we've had. Walked for 10 days in continuous rain, and that'll live in my memory forever. Torridon as another excellent starting point. You're literally straight out into the hills there. But yes, I've done all the start points, bar Plockton, and the new one, which the name escapes me, begins with an A, which I haven't done. But I did have a look at Plockton last year, and it hasn't inspired me.
Well, as it happens, we started from Plockton this year, and the feeling it gave us was we've done Torridon, we've done Mallaig. You feel you've started straight away, but Plockton is a little bit of extra work somehow to get away from civilization, to get onto the hills, as it were. And I would say that was the lingering feeling it's left with us. Lovely spot and a lovely place to start from, but didn't feel that we'd actually started until day two.
Yeah, that was my impression of it. But as you say, an absolutely superb village and a lovely setting. So maybe 1 year.
Excellent. Now, moving slightly on, I've noticed the couple of years that I have seen you, we haven't sort of touched base, but now I've got you in my presence. I've noticed you've been carrying very much a Ray Mears type rucksack. And fascinated as I am with the world of lightweight and how people have improved their trips, I have to ask you, what on earth do you carry in a rucksack that size?
I carry probably no more than you carry in yours. Maybe a litre of whiskey to start with. But that's my only comfort. I don't carry anything special. It is a big rucksack. It's one I've been using. It's the second one of that sort, actually. But I've been using that for probably 20 years now. It is comfortable. It is heavy. And the reason I haven't changed that and a lot of my other gear is it isn't worn out. I'm a Yorkshireman. And until something is well past its best, I'm not going to replace it. But as and when, then yes, I'll go for something a wee bit lighter. But this year I've taken the side pockets off it.
Oh, so I have noticed. Yes.
I'm not tempted to put stuff in the side pockets. But just thinking back to probably 96 on the challenge, when a friend who was with me broke his ankle, and I was able to strap his rucksack on the top of that one and walk for a couple of days, and it was still comfortable. Heavy, but comfortable.
Yeah, my word. Well, in case people don't realise what we're talking about, it's, I'd say, is it a 100 litre?
It's a 100 litre Berghaus.
Oh, it's a Berghaus. It's
Yeah.
a military-style Berghaus.
It is indeed, yes.
Yeah.
Yes, the one they had in the Falklands.
A real man's rucksack.
Actually, I bought that just several months before the Falklands, and then when that cropped up, all the Berghaus production went to the army, and you just couldn't get one for love nor money.
All right. And over the years, of course, I mean, I've only been doing it a few years and experienced a wide variety of weather. Here we are standing doing this now in glorious sunshine after a fairly chilly start to the day. What are your thoughts on the weather for this particular crossing?
So far, it's not been too bad. But what I have noticed over the years is every year is milder. I can recall in the first years of the challenge, waking up to ice on the inside of the tent and keeping my boots inside the tent so they weren't frozen in the morning. I've not had anything like that now for several years.
Do you think the weather? I mean, the weather patterns are obviously changing, but it's getting milder. But do you think the actual range of weather that we're experiencing during this 2 weeks is actually widened as well? 1 minute we're getting sort of freezing cold ice, next minute it's glorious sunshine.
Yeah, it's always been like that. You can have all 4 seasons in 24 hours. I don't think that's changed, but it's certainly a lot milder, a lot wetter than I'm going to say a lot wetter. We've had wetter periods. But the ground, even though, before I came I was told that they'd had 3 weeks of glorious sunshine, and I was expecting the ground to be fairly dry, and I was surprised it isn't. Still very waterlogged in places.
Yeah, very much so. Finally, I know that you've done a stint in the control room a couple of years ago, and you've volunteered to do some more. What's actually life like in the control room, sort of during the 2-week period? It's a bit of a mystery to everybody, I think.
Well, I'll be honest, when I first volunteered to do it, I thought, I'm going to be bored stiff. And I took books to read and a notebook so I could start writing stories. And it was nothing like that. You're busy literally from 8 o'clock in the morning through till 10 o'clock at night, which is when the phone is turned off. But you're still accepting calls and making notes right through to 11 o'clock at night. It is non-stop. It is great fun. You get challengers who are very, very down. You've got to try and cheer them up. Try and persuade them to continue. I loved every minute of it. And I didn't get time. I don't think I opened one book. I certainly didn't write more than 3 or 4 words.
I know Roger's very proud of the simple but practical system. I certainly, the first year I arrived in the control room, I was expecting a sort of big glass screen with little dots on it where everybody was being tracked across, and he was saying, no, it's a book and a bit of paper and a calculator, and that's all you need.
Yeah, absolutely right. If it works, don't change it, don't fix it. Yeah. Yes, it's just a register with everybody's name and number and all their phone-in points. And it's as simple as that. You know exactly who should be ringing each day, where they're ringing from. Any problems, you've got a copy of their route. We've got a complete set of the Ordnance Survey maps. Very, very simple. I can't see any reason to make it more complicated by computerising it. And what happens when your computer goes down?
Absolutely, absolutely. So on every trip there must be a one particular high point that you look forward to. Either getting out into the most remote spot, or resting in glorious sunshine, or jumping into a loch, or the meal at the end when you arrive. What is your one single moment that you really look forward to?
Raising a pint at the end of the challenge. Simple as that. No, there are various other things. You look forward to probably your first hill of the challenge. But certainly at the end of it, dipping your toe in the water, then going and having that celebratory pint that's magic.
Well, it's 4:30 and we've just come away from Coogee Lodge, that well-known den of iniquity to challengers. And talking to the lady there, she's been welcoming challengers for the last, 20-odd years, did she say?
Well, a long time.
Long time, and she's actually stopped doing accommodation now, but appears to be still welcoming challengers in. The accommodation that she's done commercially, I think she's bringing to an end. So do make sure you can get a booking if you're considering doing that in the future. But a lovely sort of wood-built family farmhouse, with all the rest of the family each having a building around the place. I think there's a riding stables there and some pigs.
It's quite a menagerie, isn't there? There's rabbits and guinea pigs and the dogs there. And
yes, it's a real backcountry family setting. I think she said she'd had something like 17 or 18 for lunch from the family at the weekend. So you can imagine there's lots of people around all over the place. But it's a real oasis of welcoming tea and buns, as we've just had when we were passing through.
She spotted us as we were coming and offloading our rucksacks, and we sort of said, have we got the right place? And she welcomed us into the kitchen, and there was a huge pile of fruit and cheese scones and jam and butter, and the tea was on, and there was already a few challengers there, sat there with their feet up, including Alan Hardy
and Maria and Stuart, all enjoying. And as we were there, several more arrived that had booked in for the evening. But we've decided to keep going. We're going to keep going down the forest track and see if we can find a camping spot so that allows us to get into Drumnadrochig
fairly easily and hopefully at a reasonable time tomorrow. We've decided not to go over the tops, but take the forest route. Weather-wise, it's been once again very surprising. This cold, incessant wind, which seems to associate the challenge with May, is still there, and it's still very cold down the neck, and it all seems to be coming from the direction we're walking in, whichever direction we walk. But there's blue sky, and there's a bit of sunshine there between the clouds, which keeps coming out and cheering us up, and then it goes away again. The temperature suddenly drops. But otherwise, it's good walking conditions. We're both dry. We've packed away our wet weather gear, and hopefully the next couple of hours will see us a bit further down the road, down at Garve Bridge, I think is the area that we're aiming for, to see if we can find a camping spot, and then review the day, I think.
Okay, sounds good.
Well, it's 9 o'clock, and I thought now would be a good time to review the day. We've settled into our tent, we've had something to eat, and we're sort of at that exhausted stage where sleep is quickly going to be upon us. We left Old Beath this morning, about 9 o'clock-ish, and beetled down to Loch Afric, in Glen Afric, obviously. And that was a fairly easy walk, actually. Came through fairly well, and as we mentioned before, just had the chill of the wind and so on. Got down to the bridge just before Afric Lodge, where we stopped for a brew and met a few people. And they were saying that it might be a better route for us, bearing in mind the trouble we'd had across the mountains and the heather the previous day, to actually change our route to go through what do they call it now? Tomwich, which is in the direction of Canwich, and then to head into the trees to come down to Drumnadrochit, through the woods rather than over the top. And admittedly, the top did look like it was going to be a pretty wet experience. And that combined with the weather forecast that we'd heard from a couple of people that it was going to be pretty foul, probably from tonight onwards, we're thinking perhaps prudence is the better part of valour. So we've decided to change the route slightly. So we're going to head down towards Tomwich. Well, in fact, we're now camped near Tomwich, and then we'll take the back roads over to Corrimony, and then through the woods coming in from the west straight to Drumnadrochit. One thing I do want to say is, for anybody listening to this that's thinking of doing the same route to head to the Coogee Inn, there is Coogee Lodge rather. There is one particular error on most maps which does throw you, and in fact it was the talk of the lodge when I got there, and that is the little lochen at grid reference 209-216 is not a little lochen, it's a blooming great big thing. And you take the path up the stream side there, and then head towards Coogee. And as you come over the rise, you look towards the lochen and think, okay, I'm on the right spot, and take a bearing. And all of a sudden, the lochen turns into something about 5 or 6 times the size that you're expecting. And for a good half hour or so, I was a bit concerned that I'd somehow taken the wrong path somewhere, even though everything else seemed to fit on the map. And the other thing as well is the woods that are shown on our map no longer exist. They've all been cut back or culled or whatever the term is. So consequently, the hillside that I was expecting to be a small lochen with woodland behind wasn't. It was a very large lochen with no woodland behind. And for a moment we were a bit concerned, but there were a few other people on the path well ahead of us, and we recognised their rucksacks, so they certainly seemed to know where they were going because they'd mentioned Coogee, so we thought we were on a safe bet, and sure enough we were. But it's apparently a regular complaint from a lot of people, and it really throws them trying to get to Coogee. So we came through Coogee onto Garve Bridge. We looked for somewhere to camp at Plodder Falls, which was disappointing. Then we came through Hilton Lodge, which is very eerie, a very strange atmosphere there, wasn't there?
Yeah, I think it was. There's an old ruined house, which is probably looks like it might have been quite grand, and there's just odd touches, like there's a wall and obviously plantings of rhododendrons, and there's a wrought iron footbridge in the distance, just as if everything's fallen to pieces somehow. And
yeah, it's quite
spooky
it's
feeling.
Quite an eerie feeling. Yeah, you saw the landscaping of the gardens and just sort of left,
all overgrown and falling into disarray. It was quite sad, almost. It felt. And there was another other place you spotted which looked ideal. Again, a nice flat pitch, and it was in a sort of like a crofter's fallen down cottage. And it looked perfect until we got a bit closer, and you could hear a swarm of I don't know whether it was wild bees or wasps or whatever, but it was so.
It was loud, and it wasn't, and it wasn't very far away.
I just thought I could just imagine all night wondering if they were going to swarm, and so we didn't camp there.
No, so we carried on going, and as we did so, we got to the edge of not suburbia, but certainly a few houses in the rural area. And all of a sudden, the feeling comes over you to where are you allowed to camp and so on, and the English feeling as opposed to the Scottish feeling. So we sort of bypassed a few houses and found a bit of sort of common land, and we pitched up on there for the night by a stream. And there's a roadway nearby, and people have certainly slowed down as they've come past. So it gives us an uncomfortable feeling. But we're here, we're in the tent, we're settled, and we'll be gone first thing in the morning. So I'm sure they won't have too much to complain about. So tomorrow we are, as I say, probably heading over to the Ford and Waterfalls on the way to Corrymoney, and then hopefully we'll be into Drumnadrochit at a reasonable time, early afternoon, all being well. Anything else to add? What else have we been seeing today?
I just have to say I love the waterfalls I've seen. We've passed some really spectacular waterfalls today. A few of them have been sort of marked, but lots of them are just there, and they're just fantastic. So I've really enjoyed looking at all the waterfalls today.
There you go. She's happy. That's the main thing. So probably in some respects a bit of a boring day, really. It's been a lot of. It
was a nice sunshine too.
When the sun's out and you're out of the wind, it's really warm. But sadly, that doesn't last very long.
No.
So fingers crossed the weather's stays good for the next few days, and we will obviously report back in the morning as we set off. As you can hear in this piece, a very tired Andy and Kate appeared to have a tough day. And as you can see, they were only slightly ahead of us before veering off over the ridge in the direction of Fort Augustus.
Well, a pretty hard slog today. Weather was good though, for most of the way. And we walked to Coogee Lodge. And then from Coogee Lodge had the first of those problems that are inevitable from time to time. We decided to pick up a small path that ran high across the moors, and woodland and forest had been cleared. It was difficult to see where the path was. So at times like that, it's kind of always best to kind of look around and think, well, if I just climb that ridge at the top of it, I'll be able to get my bearings, which we did. The ridge took a long time to climb, and on the top, loads and loads of more peat hags and peat bogs.
Another person who was having a bad time of it was Darren Christie, a solo walker who was using a tarp and taking the really tough high route out of Mallaig. Fortunately for him, he met an experienced challenger, Phil Lambert, on day 2, who realised very quickly that Darren wasn't at all well. So Phil kept him company in the hope they would make it down to an easier lower route. However, that wasn't to be.
By day 3, I was in my tarp, I was being sick. Phil was trying to give me liquids to help keep me hydrated, but every time I had a sip of something, I was just bringing it straight back up, and I just wasn't in a good way.
You started from Mallaig, and I presume you felt okay when you first started?
Oh yeah, the first day was fantastic. I felt really good. I'd got a bit of a sore throat, but it wasn't really bothering me, and yeah, I made good time to Tarbert where I met up with Phil.
And I presume that was a fortuitous bit of luck as well, because the route that you were taking from Mallaig wasn't the boat over to Inverary, was it?
No, original plan was quite an ambitious one that Dave and I had come up with, and David dropped out beforehand because of personal reasons, and I decided to go ahead but just stick to our low-level route, and my day 2 was now the most strenuous day that I'd got, and luckily I'd met up with Phil.
So what happened then? Just talk us through what happened at the end of day 3 into day 4.
Okay, I was still ill. I was able to keep some liquids down at the end of day 3, and the plan was to see how I was in the morning, but during the night I was being sick again, so in the start of day 4, Phil decided he'd crack on and try and get help for me, because there was no way I was going to be able to get out under my own steam. So Phil took reading on his GPS, and the plan was for him to go to some lodges nearby, which were about 11 to 14k away, and if he couldn't get a phone there, to walk on so he could get a mobile signal and get me help.
Well, I know there's no mobile signal where you were, obviously, and
no.
in the end I think he ended up walking something like 14 miles before he came across any help.
Oh yeah, he had a massive day before he was actually able to get a signal, get any help for me, and what Phil did was incredible. I think I'll always be grateful to him for what he did. So it was a superhuman effort as far as I was concerned.
And sadly, when I spoke to him at the end, he was saying that the first people he came across actually refused to help.
Yeah, I'd heard that from Phil's wife afterwards, and I just can't believe that. It's so hard to fathom out.
So has it put you off doing the challenge again?
No, I want to try again next year if I can get on it. My wife's not too keen for me to go on it again, but I'll definitely apply again and hopefully get on it.
And I presume take a bit more of a sociable route just to dot the I's and cross the T's.
Yeah, for the first time across.
Yeah, I mean, from that point of view, for anybody doing it for the first time, what sort of mistake do you think you made, really, that unfortunately ended up in the being airlifted out?
Well, I'd been ill with a chest infection a few weeks into the run-up to starting the challenge, and I thought that I'd recovered from it, but I'd had a sore throat, and there'd been some signs that you wouldn't associate with it, that looking back, I don't think I was really recovered enough. I was probably still had a bit of it with me when I started. So it was ignoring my body, really, giving me some warning signs.
So I presumably the rescue people were pleased to find you in one piece?
Yeah, I think they were. I was really relieved to see them. I was so emotional, and they were... Well, I can't thank them enough for what they did. They did such a good job. The 2 guys that were dropped off to check me over first, they assessed the situation, they put a drip in my arm. They were fantastic.
And I presume you were taken then off to Fort William, were you?
Yeah, I was taken to the Fort William Hospital, and the nursing staff there were incredible. So I can't praise them enough, really. They were really kind, they were very sympathetic and very supportive, and they did a fantastic job. I can't thank them enough either. And hopefully I'll be back next year.
That concludes this part of The Tale of Two Podcasters from the 2007 RAB TGO Challenge, brought to you by theoutdoorsStation.co.uk.